Jared Poland, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and welcome to another 5-minute portrait, and this time I'm joined by DigiRichie. How are you?
Good, man. How are you?
I am doing well because I have the Apple Watch on my wrist. This so happens to be the Apple Watch with the Milanese loop, and I am wearing this because it is our job. The challenge for this 5-minute portrait is to try and capture the hero shot similar to the advertisements that Apple has been running for this particular watch and band. So what are some of the challenges we're gonna face?
Well, when we first started talking about this and we're looking at all the images on the internet and on Apple's website and they use for all their promo, and we're looking at the highlights, we're looking at the shadows and trying to determine how we're gonna get it. But once the watch showed up, it threw us a little curveball, I think. There's this beautiful highlight on the band when you see the key art images and you go, oh wow, that's great. But then you look at it in real life and it's a basket we've designed on the watch bracelet. So there's no actual way for highlights to come through. So this brings us to the question, is this CGI or is this a photograph that we're replicating after CGI?
Right, so I mean that's the challenge of it is, you know, Apple creates amazing images. And this one we're thinking may have a little bit of CGI involved with it. Now we're not totally sure, but it doesn't really matter because our job is to try and replicate it to the best of our ability and try to make it as good as their ad and just try to get close.
One frame, no comp, no plates, no nothing. You know, might have to experiment with a few things for highlights and shadows, but it's pretty straightforward lighting as far as a still life image goes.
Right, so the challenge for us is try to capture it as best as we can in camera with the gear that we have. Now, speaking of gear, Richie, what gear are we using for this shoot?
Man, I brought a bunch of stuff. ProFoto was nice enough to lend us some D1 monolights, so we got half a dozen of them and about a dozen different types of modifiers, all shapes and sizes, octagon strips, soft boxes, a P50, a beauty dish, just to find out what's the best one for the highlight.
Sure.
From there, we have everything on C-stands with J-hooks, so that way we can be nice and secure and we can still move. We got a nice little secondary monitor, that way we don't really have to move too far from here. We can stay in our little zone. We're trapped in here.
Right, so you have that set up more so if you had the client on set. Correct. You could hide them in a corner and stay away from you so they're not bothering you or hearing the issues like, oh, we have an issue.
Right.
In this way, they're just off to the side.
It's on a courtesy kit and it can go 40 feet away, and typically I put it as far away from me as possible. And it's not anything offensive.
Sure.
It's more so the photographer can have his point of view and not have 30 other people kind of in his ear and breaking concentration. From there, you know, we come around, we got Tether Tools iPad mount kit now, which is really neat. We got that up showing our key art. From there, we come over, we got more Tether Tools stuff just to make sure everything's nice and locked down, stays nice and secure. We don't drop any tethering. The computer, we're running an iMac that's on a constant battery backup that way. Worst case scenario, we lose power, we're still shooting. Even though our strobes are dead, we can shoot available light. We got a bunch of hard drives. We're shooting to that Buffalo Stripe drive that we were talking about before, backing up to external drives. We got our Wacom tablets. We got a full kit.
Right, so basically you have everything that you take on a full shoot.
Right.
So what camera are we shooting with?
Today we're gonna be using the Nikon D810, and reason being it's the highest megapixel on the market in 35mm. It's the closest thing you're gonna get to medium format without actually going medium format. And it's a beautiful camera. It's so rugged and all, you know, just versatile.
Right, and it gives us the ability to shoot with the USB 3 because we're tethering. Not that we're gonna be shooting a lot of photos, but it will transfer them much quicker over to the iMac through where we're using the Tether Tools cables.
Yeah, we're using that and the Tether Boost core controller, which is a cool little thing that's gonna make sure your power management from one end to the other is not interrupted. With USB 3, that's a huge issue that a lot of cameras and a lot of people are having. You drop connection often because the cable's underpowered coming from the computer.
Sure. All right, so now that we have that entire setup laid out, you know what we're shooting with. And remember, you don't have to buy all this gear. We're borrowing the gear from ProFoto because a lot of times the stuff is extremely expensive and not a lot of people do buy it. So, I mean, you don't buy all the gear when you go on shoots, correct?
No, 95% of the time. I mean, we own a small personal ProFoto acute kit and some other stuff, but 95% of the time we have grip trucks coming in with all our grip, and then we'll have another half ton coming in with 40, 50 packs, 60 heads, bi-tubes, and every modifier under the sun. You know, when we did Better Call Saul with Ben Loiner a couple months ago, we literally brought in a semi-truck full of ProFoto gear. And to own 60 packs, right there is $750,000 just in packs without heads, head extensions, power cords, stingers, modifiers, and everything else that you need that goes with that single pack.
Sure, so you can see there's a lot of gear that we're going to be using, but now I think it's time that DigiRichie and I turn around and start to lay out how we're gonna set up the lighting diagram to shoot the watch. So basically, what you're talking about is you're gonna draw it out here so you have a basic starting point. That little bit of a roadmap to figure out where lights are gonna go just as a starting point.
Correct. So if we have our seamless just like right here, and X marks the watch.
Hold on, X equals watch.
So from here, what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at how we're gonna light this. Now, the majority of the stuff in here, in this photo, is reflections. We're not gonna light it direct, we're lighting it with bounced light coming back. So it's gonna be more lighting the background and using fill cards to push light back in, or black cards to pull light back out.
Right, so you're not then shooting directly the lights in the front. Why is that?
Basically because you're not gonna have as much control. You can't really feather the light to get like this kind of gradation that you would if we're pushing the light back in, and we can feather it and we can kind of push it and mold it where we want to without actually having a hot spot coming right in, giving us, you know, really high specular highlight.
Right, so right off the rip, if you were to shoot straight in, you're gonna get a lot of highlights, whereas if you let it come in from the back and then bounce back in, it's gonna be much softer.
Much softer, much easier to manipulate.
Okay.
So in my head, I look at this and I say, okay, there's light coming from behind it that's wrapping over top, light coming from below it, wrapping underneath, and then you're just putting black cards in just to pull those out, just to kind of give you that edge of a shadow line there.
Sure.
So we're gonna start off, we're gonna put a 1x3 with a grid on it. Now, a 1x3 strip box with a grid to oculate the light, that way the light's not spilling everywhere. We're controlling exactly where on the paper hits the light, that way we control exactly where we take the light from and put it back to. So that's where we're gonna boom that in off of a C-stand, and always a C-stand with a J-hook or a sandbag. Today we'll probably be using J-hooks just because it's easier to carry around and travel with. That way we use all our bags.
Right, and the J-hook's just gonna allow you to attach a bag to it because we don't have extra sandbags, which makes so your C-stand doesn't topple over.
Correct, safety first. So we're gonna hang that 1x3 right in the middle above where the watch is gonna be. Now we're gonna hang the watch from here, so the watch is gonna probably be about 2 feet into the background. That head's gonna be maybe an inch to 2 inches above it, but banging straight behind it.
Sure.
That way the light's centered behind the watch, just like when you shoot liquor bottles, you put the light directly behind the liquor bottle. That way it comes through and illuminates it from the inside out as opposed to outside in.
Got it.
So after we do the 1x3, we're gonna take a 3-foot octa that we have something round. I just see something round in here. And even after looking at the bevel, I still can't not think of a round modifier just to have that kind of fall off, just wrapping around these nice edges here. So we're gonna take a 3-foot octa, and again, it's gonna be behind the watch, feathered a little bit towards the watch just to throw a little extra light, and that's gonna give us a lot more control over the bottom as well, because now we have a lot more light spilling in and coming down that we're gonna reflect back in to give you this highlight on the bottom of the bevel.
Right.
From there, we may have to add a 3rd light just coming in from behind camera, just to open everything up and just to kind of smooth things out a little bit. That way we get this nice highlight, which is a reflection on the band, without going in and doing bounce cards at every little angle just to make sure that's nice and even.
Where would you be hanging the watch from?
What we're gonna do is we're gonna take fishing line. We're gonna put it here and here to support the main face of the watch. And then we're gonna take another piece of fishing line here and another piece down here by where the clasp is gonna be. What that's gonna do is we'll stretch it out. So say the 2 are here coming down to hold the watch up. What these 2 are gonna do is they're gonna pull the band away because gravity is gonna take that band to go straight down.
Got it.
So what that's gonna do is that's gonna give us our band, that nice little curvature in the band. We'll have full control if we need to pull further out of frame, into frame, and that way it's in camera, it's done. We're not messing with clipping it.
Sure.
After all that, I think we have a pretty good starting point of how we're gonna light it, what we're gonna light it with, and how we're gonna proceed from here.
All right, so that definitely does make sense. Remember, guys, get that roadmap set up. Don't be afraid to draw out your diagram of where you want things because it's a great starting point. You need a place to start so you just don't get to the time to shoot and you're like, well, where do I go from here? Now we have this roadmap. We can get to the point where I hand my watch over to Richie and we get ready to shoot. So here we go, Richie. Take my watch away and don't break it. How about that?
I will take the utmost care of it, sir.
All right, so we finally have the Apple Watch hanging. Now, it didn't all go as planned, which sometimes is gonna happen during your shoots. Richie, what was the issue we ran into?
We basically ran into an issue with gravity where the watch's band is actually a little bit too heavy to engineer the way we were going to do it with the multiple ropes. It was giving us a harder edge.
Right, so if you wanted to do it, I mean, we used the fishing line, which we did the couple of lines that you said would work, and it does. But unfortunately, the way that the band hangs, it's almost impossible to replicate what Apple has in their image.
Correct.
You know, we could have spent extra hours trying to tie every single wire that we could, but what we did is we improvised. The watch comes with a little cardboardy thing that goes in there to get the nice shape. We've put that in there, and it's gonna be a part of the image, and that will be something that we will take out in post along with the fishing line. It is what it is. You have to get the shot. We didn't want to compromise and just have the band hanging there.
I think, you know, we get the lights on, we look through camera, put the final touches on. I don't think we're that far out.
Yeah, and we already have the lights set as to our diagram. That's why we drew the diagram, so that we could go ahead, set the lights where we think it's gonna work, and then bring the camera in and get shooting, which I think we're at that point to bring the D810 in.
Yeah.
All right, so let's bring the D810 in. Right now you have it tethered. How are you tethering it to the computer?
So right now, what I'm doing is, typically what I do is I always have 1 to 2 tether cables banded together, and what it usually is a 15-foot extension to a shorter cable going from the extension to the camera. What the Tether Tools Core Booster does for me is it's a powered unit that adds power to get rid of any lack of juice coming and going from the computer through the cable and any issues there. And what it's doing is it's hosting power from here to here to here to here, so it's not relying on the computer to power the electric.
Right, and because what would happen is if you don't have enough power, you're gonna lose the file that was going?
Well, what happens is with the D810 is you'd get like maybe 2 or 3 frames and then it would crash. Now, if you don't shut the camera off, you unplug the tether, restart capture, plug it back in, this is enough of a buffer where it'll keep it. A lot of cameras don't anymore.
Yeah.
And I never shoot with the memory card in for 2 different reasons. One, if this cable comes a little bit loose and you know, photographer just keeps shooting, something could go wrong. He's shooting no card now. You know, if I'm running around doing something else, who knows what's going on? So to me, there should never be a card in the camera, I think.
For this type of studio shot?
For studio, absolutely.
All right, so we want to get the lights on, or what are we going to do next?
Yeah, so we're going to use this cool little air remote from ProFoto. It actually controls, so while we were putting the lights up, we changed head A, head B, and then our third head that's on standby will be C. And I can actually change all the power. I can turn the modeling light on, I can power the head up from here. So we're going to start with our B head. Our B head is lighting the background. What that is, that's the light that's going to hit up there and it's going to just wrap all over the place.
So what kind of settings do we have in the camera right now?
We're going to try to shoot as much depth of field as we can just because of how small the object is and how long the lens is. We kind of want to meet halfway somewhere. That way we have only about a ½ inch, maybe a ¼ inch of depth of field is all we need. Since we're in so close, it's going to be throwing it out a little bit, so we're going to try to beef up the aperture a little bit without going too high and worrying about diffraction or anything else like that. So let's block the camera. Do you want to do the honors?
Sure. I'm gonna take my glasses off because I can't see with them, and I can't see without them. All right. I think we're pretty good right here. Okay, so I mean, we may need to level it a little bit. Do you just want to worry about that after we get the light set?
I think we look at the light, and we start problem solving that way, and we shoot one, see what it looks like. Now, since we are shooting still life, we want to be very motionless.
Yep.
Any movement, even that, is going to transfer into that movement.
Shouldn't have touched the table.
It's going to throw that focus. See that little bit of movement there? Even though we're at, you know, about 160th of a second, just to combat any kind of camera shake, and the strobes are fast enough to lock action, we don't want to...
Right, you don't want the motion in there.
So we're going to go ahead, we're going to check where we're focused on. Now, right now, we're focused on the body. We're not on the crown, we're not on the band, we're in the middle ground.
Yep.
So all goes well, we got everything, right?
Sure.
Let's take a look. And as you can see, we're getting a nice backlit image. We're getting light that's coming up and around. You can see, you know, everybody over here, everybody there. And now that's a good place to be. As underexposed and ugly as that actually looks, that's actually a really good place. We're gonna have one issue to address, and that's gonna be flare since we're shooting into a background. That's just gonna be the angle of the seamless.
Right.
We're just gonna mess around with that and try to make sure we're not going, our angle of incidence isn't coming directly into the lens as it is, or there's not just too much light. The black card we put in for the shadow is also going to do the same thing. That's also going to subtract a little bit of light. So that I think is going to be the last step, is adding that shadow line. I think what we can do is start building our highlights and then kind of work out the flare as we go and see, because once we start adding cards, we could be putting flare somewhere else.
Sure.
And it could just be simply flare coming off of that directly back in the lens from anything auxiliary too. So first step is we want to add this top highlight that we have here. So right now we have a little bit of it coming in, and we're not even on the octa right now.
So how many lights do we have firing?
Right now we're on a single head. And most still life really are 1, maybe 2, 3 at max, unless you're really getting crazy and doing some dynamic lighting and throwing shadows and highlights. But what we're gonna do is we're gonna work on this top highlight first, and then once we're lit, then we're gonna really concentrate on the depth of field and the flare.
Got it.
So I'm gonna take just a 16 by 20. Actually, I think I actually have some 20 by 30 white, which would be better. And I'm just gonna put it right above. And what that's gonna do is it's gonna take all the light down to there, and put it just across the top there.
Got it.
So here we go. So we got some A-clamps, we got some foam core, we got black, we got white, we got all kinds of shapes and sizes. Just for all intents and purposes, just to see what's happening, to illustrate what just something that minute could do. I'm just gonna balance it there, and I'll let you take the honors.
Oh, I get to push the button?
And we're gonna lock our focus.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now you can shoot.
Boom.
All right, so let's take a look. And all right, you can see it's starting to come to life a little bit.
Sure.
It's in there, it's coming, it's happening. So now we just have to work out. I'm looking at the background, I'm saying, all right, that's a little under. We're ISO 200, f36. We want to be ISO 100. Probably, you know, a little above 22, I think.
F22?
I think in that range right there. So if you want to change that on the camera, feel free. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and walk around. I'm going to take a look at what this light up there is doing and just see where my angle is. And just by simply dropping it a couple inches should change that angle, should help a little bit with the flare, and it should also save us from having to max these heads out. Now, right now we're using a single 1000 watt head through a 1x3 softbox, strip softbox. We do not have the grid on it because we haven't run into how we need to oculate the light and how to really trap it. So let's take a frame there to see what it's doing. And there you go. You're starting to see it already is starting to come in now. The fun part's gonna be, you know, we already have the bottom, but we have to control it a little more, and then we have to get black under here. That's actually gonna come from behind and wrap around.
And we also have to make sure that we don't get ourselves in there.
Correct. Correct. And what's going to happen is once we get fully lit, there's going to be a black on both sides, a white underneath, and cameraman is...
Or sitting on the floor.
Or sitting on the floor. We can fire from the computer too.
We just fire from over there.
And we'll block off the sides too, just to give a nice little, just to get a little more light in there, because it's still severely under and it is flaring.
Are we going to level it out a little bit too?
Yeah, once we get the light, I think then we start messing with the watch a little bit more. If we get the watch perfect and then we bump it while putting a card in, we're counter, you know what I mean?
Got it.
So right now, I'm looking through the camera here. Let's just refocus because I feel, well, it's a little movement here, but I'm gonna take a look here. So we're ISO 100, we're flaring. We didn't change our ISO, so we're gonna go down to 100. Let's take a frame there, let's see what's going on.
You want me to pop it?
Go ahead.
I want to just take a look. Boom.
Okay, so you see immediately we lost all that power. So we're gonna just bump this head up as high as we can get on it.
So you're upping the power of the flash, the one flash that's on currently.
Correct. That to me means it's at max. So we're gonna just check and move the camera slightly. So we're just gonna recompose. And why don't you try there, see what that looks like. So it's getting closer. You can see how much detail the D800 is offering by showing us even in flare.
Yeah.
You know, and that's total flare back there, but that's an easy fix. So we're gonna start working on this highlight edge here, and what that's gonna be is raising this over a little bit. And we're gonna just go ahead and take a frame there. So that shows it's giving us a little more light.
Wow.
Pushing it back.
Yeah, it popped it back in there. So it's just the angle of the board is bouncing the light right where you want it.
Right.
So it seems like a little bit more of an angle. It's going to give you what you're looking for.
Correct. But before we go too crazy, since we know it's going to be a clamshell, meaning there's a light on top, light on bottom, kind of replicating each other. And that to me, is a much hotter highlight, and you have much more edge on that. We're going to go ahead and we're going to put the bottom board in first.
Sure.
And right now, again, we still are flaring. So once we get that black card in there, if we are still flaring, we just have to re-engineer a few things. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to look through camera, and we can already see it. And Jared, if you don't mind, just taking a frame right about there. How are we looking?
Well, we have the extra highlight coming in.
So now we're getting into the bottom. Now, the first thing we normally do once we get close to lighting is we throw a color card in. That way we can neutralize everything, have a fresh slate of color to work with. Because right now, it's really cold. Could just be throwing our mentality off just by messing it up.
So what are you using here?
I'm using the X-Ray Color Checker Passport. This is great for macro, one, because of the size, because you don't have something along the lines of like an 8.5 by 10 that's going to give you 1 by 1 blocks. You have 1/4 by 1/4 blocks. So you'll be able to get a much larger range of grays in there. And we're going to aim for this bottom row here. We're going to get that bottom row. So I'm going to go ahead and put that right in front of the watch. And we're just going to refocus on it real quick. So go ahead and just give her a pop there. All right, so we have a color card. It's not the greatest, but it works. We're going to go ahead and take a white balance, and it's going to warm it up. So let's just copy that. And then we're going to apply it to our previously shot frame. That's looking a little more neutral. The thing about shooting chrome is we're picking up everything and anything around it. To me, you see it's a little bit wonky, so we have an articulated head. We're going to take the head. I'm just going to dip down a little bit. Let me take a frame there and see what that's doing. Let me just turn and focus off. There you go. Okay, so it's starting to look a little better, right? We're getting richer, we're getting closer. We're gonna add that second light in, and we're gonna turn it actually, and we're gonna put it on the background. Because originally I was thinking we'd have to have a light kind of creep around and dip around. But as I see this, we lucked out and we're getting that shadow immediately.
Right.
So we don't need to take light away from there. We just have to kill that reflection and just get a little bit more light coming through around. And then we have to kill the reflection on the bottom, which is just simply a black piece directly underneath it.
Right.
So we're gonna get a blackboard right in here. We're gonna get that other head, spin it around, and put more light on the background. It's almost gonna be tabletop, just so it's a little bit further back. So let me get on that real quick. All right, cool. Now that that's kind of adjusted in a better place, I think, what it's doing is it's making an L almost now, where it's gonna just drop light straight down. It's gonna bounce everywhere, and we're just gonna start adding it and subtracting it. It's gonna boost our highlights up and get rid of that gray mid-tone that we're stuck in. We're gonna get that highlight back, not a mid-tone.
Sure.
The cool thing about the ProFoto stuff is I don't even have to, I can just move it. I can just go ahead and change. So the B head is the background. That's just how my brain works. B for background, A for key. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna pop my model lamp on here, and boom, we're gonna test it. Now, right now, I believe I'm on max power, so I'm gonna drop down, and every time I click it is a half stop. So why don't you try there? Let's see what that's doing.
Let's see, we still locked in? We are.
Yep, go ahead. All right, so now it's getting a little bit better. It's getting closer. We definitely gained a little bit of exposure. Is it enough? Maybe not, but it's getting way closer.
Right, and it's nice that we have the highlights, and then you've got the dark area here, which is what we're going for. Now it's just a matter of getting the color and everything where we want it.
We just want to get a little bit more exposure in there, and then we're gonna knock that shadow down.
Right.
I think I can do it. So let's go ahead and we're gonna make sure we're on A. So now we're at full power. That means each head's putting out 1,000 watts. Now we're shooting f/22 at ISO 100 on a macro lens. It's a lot of light.
Ooh.
Boom! Now we're on white. So now we're overly lit.
Yeah, now it's a little bit too powerful, but it looks, looks pretty good.
It's coming around now.
Yeah. Now, how difficult is it to shoot the chrome?
Extremely difficult. You're shooting a mirror. And the worst part is it's not a flat piece of mirror, it is a curve all the way around. And we are directly on axis on it. So if you look real close, we're in there. There's me, there's you, there's you.
Sure.
So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna start working on that. We're gonna drop that down. I'm gonna just, off the top of my head, I'm gonna call it 2 stops. If I go ahead, why don't you just pop one of them off? All right, we're walking it back down. Now we're just gonna check our highlights. We're gonna see how far out we are. We're not that far out.
Can we play with the ISO a little more?
We can drop it down. Do you want to go?
This does 50, I believe, the D810.
It does 50, but we could also go the other way and add some depth of field. So, your call. What do you think?
Whatever we think is gonna work here.
Let's look at our focus and see where we're at. And see, we're still a little flary, but we're shooting something shiny.
Wow, they don't even have that in their photo. We're seeing the depth. It's like they just had one link of chain.
That's all that is.
If that was even real.
Yeah. I mean, and you see the detailed difference between what that looks like and what it actually looks like.
Right.
It's a completely different looking painting.
Absolutely.
But we're pretty close. I mean, you know, we're even reading, you know, everything on the bottom here. Now the watch is still gonna be a little dirty. This is never gonna be as clean as that.
No.
So that little stuff, those are retouches. There's a little I Shoot Rolf shout out there.
There is.
A couple of them. That one's backwards. There's your inverse right there. So we're looking at, that's not out of focus. That would be sharp if we weren't flared. And since we're shooting into our light source, we need to put some black in and suck out that and add some contrast. So easiest way to do that is take a black card. And we're just gonna cut just a little bit of a strip. So now we got our black sideboards. Now, just for intensive purposes, we're gonna look and we're gonna start on this side and we're just gonna see. We're gonna look through camera and we're gonna find out how deep is it gonna get, how much is it gonna take away, is it too big, too little? Do we need to kind of come in from the top? Do we need to come in from the bottom? You see what's happening there?
Yeah.
See how just holding that parallel right there?
Yep.
So what we're doing is we're cutting off the light right there, and so take a frame there. Let's take a look, and there you go. We're losing light, but look at our blacks, they're getting deeper. You're not seeing as much in here, you're not seeing much in there. And we also gained a little bit on the bottom too. See that bottom edge? Mm-hmm. But see how much light we lost, just that little piece of black?
Yeah.
Crazy. An old trick would be, we used to take little strips of gaff. You take a piece of black gaff on the whiteboard and you just look through the viewfinder and we're gonna just stretch a piece of gaff. Because this is obviously too much. This is taking away a lot of light.
Sure.
2,000 watts and this is taking away 3 stops of light. That's crazy, isn't it? So we're just gonna make one thinner one. Now we got this little strip. We're gonna virtually do the same thing before we go the gaff tape route, just to see if we can just knock off just a hair. We just want a little bit. Let me take a frame there, see what that does. So we got some of our light back. We're starting to get a little better. And it's getting closer.
Right, so now I think it would be a good time for us to just go ahead and get it as close as possible, because there's a lot of subtle tweaks that need to go into it. So now that we've gotten it this close, you've seen what goes into this. You've seen the lights. We've started with one light, we added the second light, we added the reflectors, we added the black cards to suck some of that light back out. So now we're pretty darn close, but we want to finesse it a little more and then come back and then wrap it up with the final shot. All right, guys, so we just spent pretty much the last 4 hours playing around with different shots, trying to get that one shot. Now, you saw leading up to it that we were able to get pretty close with certain aspects of the image. We could get the black line across the middle, but when you do that, you're losing the band. You're losing the highlights that are there. So then when we tried to get the highlights back, we were losing the entire black band across the middle of the chrome. So it starts to, wear in your head that maybe it's not possible to get the exact shot that Apple did with one shot. Maybe you have to do composites or just stack things or do different plates to make it happen. Our goal was to try to do it with one shot, and I don't know that we're able to meet that, but I think we got pretty close. What do you think, Rich?
I mean, I'm stoked on how close we were able to get. I think in camera is close to unachievable. Can somebody do it? Maybe.
If we spend another week trying to do it.
Right. I think where we're at, I think we're in a really good place. I think that we got it as close as we could with the time allotted.
Right, and there's another thing I want to point out. If you look inside of the watch, not inside the physical watch, but in the reflection where the black is, there's a green reflection there. That's the lens of the camera that we're shooting with. That's the 105. The reflection of the coating of the lens is bouncing back into the watch itself. How'd they get rid of it? I don't know. So those are just some of the things that we faced as we shot. Now, probably an easy fix in post, right?
10 seconds, if that.
So the moral of the story is I don't think we're able to get it in just one shot. So let me jump in here. Now, this was a really long and intense shoot that I did with DigiRichie. Now, the idea that we set out with was to try and capture the image as best as possible in camera to match the original ad that Apple did. Well, we realized that that was pretty much going to be impossible, so we didn't just want to say, well, we couldn't do it, we don't want to finish it. We wanted to take the raw image, which you can see right here. So we went from the raw image, and then we did the editing. Actually, I sent it out to a friend of mine named Nathaniel Dodson, who has TutVid, and he's gone ahead and made tutorials on how he did the editing of this raw file to get it to the final point that you see right now. But you also see it with the band still in there. That white thing, well, that's not good. So we went from that, and then we got rid of the band, and then I'm like, Nathaniel, match it to the ad, and that is what you see, and we got it pretty darn close. Now, yes, there's a lot of post work done in there, but this all came from one raw file, and you can download that raw file and edit it yourself because I'd love to see what you guys do with it. But this was an unbelievable shoot. I think there's so much information involved in there. DigiRichie did a fantastic job, and really, there's a lot of stuff that I took out of it, and I think you guys will take out of it as well. So I want to thank everybody who had something to do with this video. Thank you to ProFoto, thank you to Tether Tools, thank you to DigiRichie and Nathaniel, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Now go ahead, download that raw file, and let's see what you would have done with it. Thank you guys very much for watching. Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.